I'm going to share my 10 must-have tools for any beginner market gardener. Starting with the simple, low-cost tools that I bought first to turn my suburban backyard into a commercial-scale vegetable farm for under $2,000. Because I didn't buy a tractor or greenhouse, and I didn't get any loans or have any money to get started. I just took small amounts of money from my paycheck every single week and bought the right tools one at a time. And then I reinvested everything I made into better, more efficient tools over time, eventually turning my backyard garden into a profitable small-scale vegetable farm. Yo, 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 what up, Gromies? Welcome back to Chef's Harvest Farm. If you're new here, I'm Chef Mikey. I'm a former executive chef, turned urban farmer, and I turned my backyard garden into a commercial scale vegetable farm, growing organic vegetables for local chefs and restaurants here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Somebody recently asked me when I started my farm what was the upfront investment, but there was no upfront investment. I just bought a few things from my paycheck every single week, one tool at a time, and then I reinvested everything I made into more efficient tools and infrastructure over the years. I didn't invest in a tractor or any big equipment just to get started. Instead, I took a different approach. Something I learned from my mentor, Daniel Mays, the author of the No-Till Organic Vegetable Farm. Daniel showed me how to start a market garden with no equipment and about a $200 investment, and then I just let time do the work. And the first tool he taught me how to use is still one of the most important tools on my farm today, and without it, none of this would have been possible. And that tool is this. A silage tarp. And I do this to show you how heavy they actually are, because there's a point to that. I bought a 105 foot by 24 foot wide silage tarp. That one's brand new, and so it's rolled up, and I'll cut it in half to create two sections that are 50 feet by 24 feet wide. I don't recommend ever buying a bigger one than that because they're so big and bulky. You're never going to get it rolled back up like that, and they're super heavy and hard to move. And even when we do have them folded up and rolled up, we use the tractor with the loader, the forklift on the front to move them around the farm whenever possible. And I overlapped them right on top of the grass with the black side facing up to attract the heat from the sunlight. Then I weighed everything down with free pallets that I got from my job, and I just let time do the rest. I'll leave links in the video description for the exact tarps I use, and I'll also include links for all the other tools I'll talk about in this video, and make sure you check for discount codes if you want to check anything out for yourself. But you should never use anything besides a silage tarp. These tarps are UV treated to withstand the sun, wind, and the rain, and any cheap hardware store tarps will break down fast and crumble into tiny microplastics that'll contaminate your soil forever. Silage tarps are built for farming, and if you take care of them, they can last a lifetime. I rarely ever pull weeds from my garden, and if weeds ever get out of control, we just cover the beds with a tarp. In the summertime, they can terminate a weedy garden in as little as a week when the temps are above 80. And in winter, they protect the soil from erosion while keeping it weed-free for spring plantings. So after a few months, the tarps had killed all the grass and I was left with a blank canvas. But now I had to figure out how to actually build beds with no tractor, no tiller, and no fancy equipment. And the second group of tools I bought, I'll count them as a set, because they're the simplest tools that any farm or garden should have. But honestly, they're still some of the most important tools on my farm that we use for preparing the beds. So I just went to Lowe's and I grabbed some wooden stakes from the construction aisle, and I used those to mark the beds and the walkways. I bought a rubber mallet to pound them in and some twine to tie between them so I could build perfectly straight rows. And then I grabbed a shovel, a wheelbarrow, a rake, and a 5-gallon bucket. And every weekend I'd go and buy as much compost as I could afford, and I got free wood chips from the local tree company. I'd shovel the compost and the wood chips into the wheelbarrows, and I'd fill the beds with about 6 inches of compost and mulch the walkways with wood chips. The compost serves multiple purposes. It protects the soil from the sun, wind, and rain, and it serves as a mulch that smothers out the weeds, so my gardens stay weed-free. Plus, it's my main fertility source because I don't usually amend my soil with anything besides compost 2 to 3 times a year. The wood chips keep the walkways weed-free, and they give us a nice surface to walk on, especially when it's raining out, so we're not trucking around in mud. But underneath all that compost was still solid, compacted Tennessee clay. And I knew most vegetables, especially things like carrots, need loose, aerated soil if they're going to thrive. So the next tool I bought helped me transform that hard, compacted clay into rich, workable soil without ever tilling. And over time, this tool is what's turned that hard, compacted clay soil into something that literally resembles potting soil. And that tool is called a broad fork. The broad fork doesn't flip soil or destroy the soil structure. It just cracks it open, lets in air, moisture, and compost, and creates an environment where plant roots can actually thrive. It's cheap, simple, quiet, and I didn't need to invest in a tractor or a tiller or know how to operate any type of heavy machinery. And since I was planning to build an organic living soil, I wanted to keep all that soil biology intact and try not to disturb it as much as possible. This is the only broad fork I've ever used, and I got it from Johnny's Selected Seeds. There's lots of broad forks on the market, and some of them have metal handles, which might be a little bit more heavy duty. This one has wooden handles, which is definitely a downside because they can break, you know. But I've had this broad fork for over 5 years now, and I've only replaced the handles on it once. But before I even think about planting, there's one crucial step that most beginners don't think about. And honestly, this is one of the most intimidating parts about starting a market garden for me, because I knew absolutely nothing about it. And the only reason I was able to figure it all out is because I bought a kit. And this kit came with everything I needed to set it up, and once I installed it, I finally understood how to design a simple and efficient irrigation system to help my plants survive the heat, grow consistently, and basically take care of themselves. So the next tool I bought was a drip irrigation kit with a timer. And I'll leave links to the exact kit that I use in the video description if you want to check it out. But since then, I've basically become an irrigation expert. Starting with these kits is how I learned everything. And over the years, I've tried just about every type of irrigation system you can imagine. And there's lots of ways to water a garden, and I've made several videos comparing different irrigation setups. I'll leave links to all those videos below so you can figure out what system works best for your garden. But before I could plant a single seed in the ground, I needed seedlings. And since I didn't have a greenhouse, I invested in the next best thing: grow lights. And I still don't own a heated greenhouse to this day, and honestly, I probably never will. Instead, I've built a pretty sophisticated indoor grow room over the years with automated temperature and humidity controls with light cycles on a timer, but you definitely don't need anything like I have just to get started. When I first started out, I just used cheap shop lights, but they dried out the soil surface and gave me bad germination. Plus, I was replacing bulbs constantly, which was super frustrating and expensive. So I switched to these Barina LED T8 lights, and that's when everything changed. My soil stopped drying out on the top, my germination immediately improved, they cost less to run, and I've never replaced a single bulb. And since I switched to these LEDs, my trays actually grow consistently for the first time. You can grab a 6-pack of these lights for under $100, which is perfect for beginners. And I actually have a discount code so you don't pay full price, and that's exactly what I'd recommend. I just mount mine to tomato stakes and I hang them from above on a wire rack. 4 lights per shelf gives me perfect coverage for 4 seedling trays. But a couple caveats to growing indoors are this: good airflow so you don't get mold or dampening off, and some type of heat and humidity controls. These oscillating fans from AC Infinity were a huge game changer for me to improve my airflow in my basement. Plus, a simple heat mat helped improve germination when it's colder. And depending on your climate, a small humidifier can help keep seedlings happy, especially in the winter when the air is cold and dry. If you want to build a simple yet effective indoor grow station without a greenhouse, I'll leave links in the video description for the exact lights, fans, racks, and heat mats that I use. Plus, I have pretty significant discount codes for you, so you can get 10% off at acinfinity.com and 15% off at barinaled.com when you use the links in the video description and my code Chef Mikey when you check out. AC Infinity is where I get all the environmental controls, and Barina LED is where I get most of the lights that I use for the seedlings. So now that I had all my seedlings growing in the basement, I needed to direct seed things like carrots, lettuce, and arugula, because I knew those were going to be some of my most profitable crops. But what was I going to do now that I had this huge garden? Get on my hands and knees and sprinkle seeds on the bed? Nah, man. So this is when I invested in Earthway Seeder. The Earthway Seeder only costs $120, so you might also be familiar with the Jang Seeder, which is definitely an upgrade. But when I was just starting out and learning, it didn't make sense for me to spend $700 or $800 on a Jang Seeder. I've upgraded to the Jang Seeder since, but the Earthway served me well when I was just starting out and learning. My mentor, Daniel Mays, insists on using an Earthway Seeder to run a 3-acre intensive vegetable market garden. And when asked why in an interview with Jesse Frost that I saw, his answer was simple. Because of the price. He can buy 5 Earthway Seeders for the price of a single Jang. Now, one of the downsides of the Earthway Seeder is it just plants too many seeds. So dude, that dropped a fucking shit ton of seed, like holy crap. A workaround from that is you can just plug every other hole in the seed plate with tape or glue from a glue gun, and then it'll drop half the amount of seeds. You can also just plant less rows per bed. So for instance, with carrots, I generally plant 4 rows on a bed with the Jang Seeder. If I were going to plant carrots using the Earthway Seeder, I would just plant 2 rows on the bed. So that gives them plenty of space and they won't be overcrowded. Once my direct seeded crops were planted, it was finally time for the one crop that every beginner market gardener can't wait to grow, which is heirloom tomatoes. So I started mine under the grow lights in the basement, and they were ready to transplant. But one thing I learned from gardening in raised beds is that tomato cages don't actually work for tomatoes. These plants don't stop at 3 feet tall, and if you treat them right, they'll get 10 feet, maybe even 20 feet long by the end of the season. So I needed a cheap, simple way to support them that actually works. So I used a trellising method made famous by my friend Josh Satin. You might know it as a trellis to make you jealous. And if you haven't seen that video, go look it up after this one. It's one of the simplest, strongest, and most affordable tomato trellis systems I've ever used. All I had to buy were T-posts, some plumbing tees, and some electrical conduit. I pounded in the T-posts, put a T on top, and slid the conduit across the top. And for just a few dollars per plant, I had a sturdy, reliable trellis system that was reusable. And the best part is that all these parts can be completely repurposed on a farm. The T-posts are used for lots of projects and different trellising methods. And I also bend the conduit to make low tunnel hoops. And then I keep frost blankets rolled up on a pool cover roller so I can pull it over the conduit for cheap and efficient frost protection. Now, once I had my tomatoes trellised, I ran into another big problem. Weeds were creeping in from the edges of the garden. So I bought one of the most underrated time-saving tools on a small farm, landscape fabric. I've got links in the video description for the only landscape fabric I'd recommend. And this stuff is reusable and it'll last a lifetime if you take care of it. I outlined my entire garden with it and I pinned it down with landscape staples. Then every year I just slide the landscape fabric back a few feet and I fill in the new gap with wood chips. And over time, my entire backyard became one giant weed-free zone. We never waste any time mowing or weed eating around the gardens. We just freshen up the wood chips once or twice a year, and that's it. A couple hours worth of work, and the perimeter of the garden stays weed-free and keeps the weeds from creeping back in. These days, I have electric fencing installed on top of the landscape fabric. It outlines all of my gardens, plus it keeps the grass from growing up and touching the electric fence, which can ground it out and make it less effective. But there's another place where landscape fabric is a huge time saver on my farm. When we harvest densely planted crops like arugula or lettuce, all that crop residue is left behind. So instead of pulling out all the plants by hand or using chemicals, we just lay landscape fabric over the bed for a week or so, and when we pull it off, the crop is dead and the bed's weed-free. All we need to do is rake out the dead plant material and plant our next crops. We let time do the work so we don't have to. And if a single bed ever gets out of control with weeds, we'll just cover it for a week or two. And then after we pull it off, the bed's weed-free and ready for planting our next crop. And now that I had my entire garden planted and the weeds under control, harvest time was creeping up fast. And this is where efficiency really matters, more than most people realize.
This is our first beet harvest. Okay. I don't really know how to harvest beet. What do I dig?
Dig it up. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay, do we just got one?
Yeah, that's all a beet is. Each one's...
So we just got one beet?
Yeah, what did you think it was going to be?
I thought it was going to be multiples.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Okay, turn it off.
On a small farm like mine, everything's harvested by hand. There's no machines, there's no conveyor belts, there's just me, my tools, and whatever I can carry out of the field. So growing the crops is the easy part. But if it takes you all day to cut, carry, and haul produce out of the field, you'll never build a profitable business. So tool set number 9, my harvest knife, my pruners, and my tool pouch I keep right on my hip at all times. I mean, I guess the most important thing is I always keep this thing here with my pruning shears, or if I need a knife, I'll have my knife in there so that I can have both hands free, you know, trellising. I can reach right here to grab my shears and put them right back without really like bending down to put something on the ground or in my pocket or whatever. So it's always important that I have something like this. I've also used like aprons with pockets in the front. Anything like that is sufficient. Just, you know, kind of something to keep your tools like right here. And now tool number 10 is what ties everything together. Honestly, this might be the single biggest time and energy saving tool I've ever bought. Tool number 10 is my garden harvest cart. It's nothing fancy, just 2 big wheels, a strong frame, and the ability to straddle a 30-inch bed with totes full of produce. Always make sure that like I bring all my gear out here using the cart, right? So I don't want to like carry one tote at a time out here and carry them back, right? I do all the work at once. I bring it all in at once. So I'm gonna be able to fit like probably close to 100 pounds worth of lettuce in this dolly and bring it all into the wash pack station at once, so I'm not running back and forth. I always want to be thinking about like how I can minimize the amount of actual physical labor that I'm doing and all the running back and forth, right? So I'm always thinking about how can I do the most amount of work with the least amount of effort. So always using things that have wheels to get started. So for anyone that's made it this far, I got one bonus tool for you. Because if you're actually starting a business, this is the most important part of all. Once I started buying all of these tools from my paycheck, I did 2 things. I got an agricultural tax exemption, so I don't pay sales tax on any tools, equipment, or farm supplies used for agricultural purposes. And then I started tracking all my expenses for tax deductions. At first, I just signed up for QuickBooks. But after that first season, I learned that farmers have to file what's called a Schedule F. And QuickBooks doesn't allow you to categorize your expenses for Schedule F. It was a nightmare. When I called QuickBooks customer service, they even told me they've never even heard of a Schedule F. So that's when I knew I needed something built specifically for farmers. And that's when I found FarmRaise. It works just like QuickBooks, only it's made just for farmers. I can snap photos of my receipts and it automatically categorizes everything for my Schedule F form. Tax season used to be stressful and chaotic, but with FarmRaise, I have everything ready for my accountant, and all we need to do is file the Schedule F form. So I make sure I keep as much money as possible, because if you don't deduct all of these expenses properly, the government's just going to take all of your money. But you can get 20% off your FarmRaise subscription when you use my code CHEFM20 when you sign up at farmraise.com. So next, if you'd like to learn more about profitable farming for beginners, you can check out this video here to see my most profitable crops. And if you'd like to hear the full story of how I actually built this entire farm from nothing with absolutely no experience whatsoever, you can check out this video here. I hope this video is helpful for you. I appreciate y'all for being here, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks, guys. Peace.